St. Paul the First Hermit, also known as St. Paul of Thebes, is regarded as one of the first Christian hermits. Born around 228 AD in Egypt, he fled to the desert during the persecution of Christians under Emperor Decius. Seeking solitude and a life dedicated to prayer, he lived as a hermit in the Theban desert for nearly a century. A significant story about St. Paul involves his meeting with St. Anthony the Great, who is another key figure in Christian monasticism. According to legend, when St. Anthony visited St. Paul, he saw that St. Paul was provided daily bread by a raven. This event is often revered as a symbol of God's provision for those dedicated to a life of solitude and prayer. St. Paul lived in a cave and wore a tunic made of palm leaves. Sustained by the grace of God in his austere life, he passed away peacefully around the year 341 AD at the age of 113. St. Anthony, who witnessed his death, buried him in a grave dug by lions, as the story goes. St. Paul's relics were later transferred to Venice and Hungary. The life of St. Paul the First Hermit is primarily known through the writings of St. Jerome, a prominent church father and theologian. St. Jerome wrote a biography of St. Paul in Latin, titled Vita Pauli Primi Eremitae, the life of St. Paul the First Hermit, around 375 AD. This work provides the foundational narrative about St. Paul's life, including his flight to the desert and his interactions with St. Anthony the Great. It's important to note that St. Jerome's account is hagiographical, meaning it was written with the purpose of edifying and inspiring the faithful, rather than serving as a strict historical record. Hagiographies often include elements that highlight the virtues and miraculous events in the lives of saints, sometimes blending history with legend to emphasize spiritual truths. As with many early Christian figures, concrete historical evidence beyond these writings is limited. The story of St. Paul the Hermit has been passed down through the tradition of the Church and remains an inspirational example of monastic life. His legacy continues to encourage believers to seek holiness through prayer and detachment from worldly concerns. He was canonized in 491 by Pope Gelasius III. St. Paul's feast day is celebrated on January 15th. St. Paul, pray for us.